Hi, welcome to the Natural Health Link. I'm Catherine Orange, and I'm going to be guiding you through an exciting journey into learning about more about natural health. Now, this is 2020, and what a crazy year it's been. What with COVID-19 locking down most of the world and making all of us scared about our health, how we're going to stay well, how we're going to avoid this pandemic. It's quite interesting that everybody I speak to is talking about health now. What can I do to eat better? Should I be exercising? How can I be fitter if I can't get to the gym, etc., etc., etc. So I decided that I would put my knowledge, my experience of over 20 years of working in clinical practice as a natural health therapist, put it to video and give you some hints and tips and some guidance in how you can live a healthier and better life and protect yourself and increase your immune system so that you can face whatever is going to come your way. Now, as I said, I've been practicing for 20 odd years, and I got into natural health through my children. My son, he's going to be nearly 30, he was about 4 years old and he was getting recurring tonsillitis. It seemed like every month I was taking him back to the doctors. He was getting a dose of antibiotics and his throat would get better for a very short period of time and then he'd get it again. After about 6 or 7 courses of antibiotics, they were getting stronger and stronger each time. The doctors actually said, that's no good. We'll take the tonsils out. Now, my husband had had a tonsillectomy when he was a child, and he'd suffered ever since. Instead of getting a sore throat, he'd get ear infections, it would go down onto his chest, he'd get bronchitis, and he'd feel really poorly. And he was adamant that we shouldn't have an operation for my son. So I was a little bit at a loss as to what to do. I couldn't let my son suffer, but the doctors wanted to take his tonsils out. I happened to be in the pharmacy and I was just trying to find some throat lozenges and Calpol and things like that to sort of help him. And I got talking with the pharmacist she was from Mumbai, and she had trained initially as a homeopath and trained also as a pharmacist later on. And she said to me, I can help you with that. And she gave me some homeopathic remedies for my son. They were fantastic. Very quickly he got better, taking these very tiny little remedies. And tonsillitis went. He never had it again. So I was very impressed with this. A bit later on, I went back not to see the pharmacist because I had some spots on my chin. It's very common after you've had children that you can get hormonal spots. So I went back to her and said, you help my son, can you help me? She gave me some remedies, and sure enough, after a short while, my skin cleared up, all the spots went. I was, again, very impressed. And then I kind of forgot about it. Until a couple of years later, my daughter was born and she was due for her MMR vaccine. Now, like every young parent, I took her down to get her vaccinations, and after she had them, about maybe a couple of weeks later, she started to get very ill. She had a high fever. She was feeling sick. You could see that she was squinting her eyes. She was finding that light was difficult for her. She was getting a headache and she was getting spots. I recognised the spots. When I was a child, I'd had measles, and all her symptoms were what I remembered from having measles myself. So I went back to the doctor and I said, I think my daughter's got measles. He said to me, impossible. She's been vaccinated. Anyway, he just told me, he sent me away and said, just take her home, give her some painkillers and put something on her spots to stop her scratching. I remembered the pharmacist, so I went back there and I said, I've just come from the doctor's and I'm not convinced that he's given me the right prescription. What do you think? She looked at me very oddly, but she saw my daughter, she looked in her mouth and she said, I think she's got measles. And sure enough, she'd got little Koplik spots on her throat. The pharmacist then did a glass test on her spots to see whether they reacted as measles spots would react. And she said, definitely measles, and gave me some pulsatilla, again a homeopathic remedy. I took this home, I gave it to my daughter, and my daughter improved almost immediately, and she processed the measles very quickly without suffering any real side effects of it. It was quite interesting that at the time my husband also began to get ill, and I looked and I thought, oh no, is he going to have measles too? But actually it wasn't measles he'd caught. He'd actually caught mumps from changing my daughter's nappies. When you haven't had mumps as a boy, when you're as a man, as an adult man having mumps, it's very painful. He went to a different doctor who confirmed that he'd had mumps. And the only contact he could have had was my daughter from her vaccine. And the doctor confirmed that sometimes that happens. So anyway, back to the pharmacist, back to homeopathy, and more treatment for my husband. These incidences got me very, very interested. On each occasion when my family had got ill, the doctor hadn't really helped me, but the pharmacist had. And the pharmacist had helped me with homeopathy. It was an area I didn't really know anything about, apart from some bad press that it's all placebo. But I thought, it had worked. I'd seen it work. So I decided to study. And I went to the library, I got books, I got online and searched out as much information as I could. I got deeper and deeper and deeper into this subject. And eventually I signed up for a course to go and study. And I did 4 years of study at the London College of Homeopathy under a real maverick of a homeopath called Robert Davison, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. During that 4 years, as I dived deeper and deeper into homeopathy, I realised just how powerful it could be. It wasn't placebo at all. It was a real therapy that could work and that has worked for hundreds of years. When I finished my college course, I became licensed to practice, and I set up a clinical practice in England, in the north of England. And I treated hundreds of people. In that time, I've continued over the last 20 years to treat people, not just in the north of England, but also in other parts of the country and also in other parts of the world. And I find now with COVID and everybody going online, I'm now expanding my clinic to everywhere because I can do it all online. During that time, I've seen some what I would only describe as miracles happening. with people coming to me who've got chronic illnesses where they have they've run out of options in the medical system, and they've come and sort of said, like, what can you do? And sometimes there's been a miraculous turnaround. Let me give you an example. It was very early on in my career that I met a small girl. She was about 12 years old, but she probably looked about 5. The clinic I was working at was up some stairs, and she arrived in her father's arms. He'd had to carry her up the stairs because she couldn't walk herself. She'd been treated at the Children's Hospital in London, and she had a disease called myasthenia gravis. Now, this disease means that your muscles, other way around, your nerves won't talk to your muscles. And this is why she couldn't have walked up the stairs. Now, that's a problem in itself, but this disease gets worse. When your nerves can't speak to your muscles, it means that eventually you can't swallow. Eventually you can't digest anything. Eventually your heart stops. So when the Children's Hospital in London had said, we've done everything we can for her, we can't do any more, take her home, she's going to die. And her parents were absolutely devastated, of course. And they'd come to the homeopathic clinic as a last resort. They were desperate. They were going to try anything. She came into the clinic. We took her case. None of us in the clinic thought that we could do anything. But we took her case anyway. And the indicated remedy was something called gelsemium. Now, this is the common jasmine you see all over the place growing up garden walls. We gave her jasmine in a 12C potency, and she had one every single day for a year. She came to see us on a regular basis. But it was almost a year to the day when she came in that she walked up the stairs herself. She had a drink in her hand and a packet of crisps. And she was eating her crisps. She bounded in, happy as anything, her parents coming in behind her with big smiling faces. Their daughter had improved 100-fold. She'd gone back to school. She was living a normal life. And they were planning on a trip to go back to see their family in India. I thought that was a miracle. It was one small little remedy that had helped her. Now, that's not the only incident. That's not the only case. I also had a doctor come to see me once who was trying to get pregnant. And she had had every test under the sun. She'd had about 4 rounds of IVF, and nothing was happening. And there was nothing wrong with her, and nothing wrong with her husband, and no reason why she shouldn't have been getting pregnant. Again, she came to see me as a last resort, out of desperation. I seem to get a lot of people coming like that. She came to see me, and I took her case. And as I took her case, I realised it wasn't physical, her problem, but emotional. So I treated the emotional cause of her not getting pregnant. And sure enough, a few months later, she was pregnant. 9 months after that, she had a beautiful baby girl. And she called it Catherine. I like to think it was after me, but maybe not. Anyway, again, like natural health, helping people. So what I have made it. I love the subject. I could talk forever on it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to split this up into different sessions so that it's manageable. I've been practicing, as I said before, I've been practicing in the clinic for over 20 years, and I've seen hundreds of people. At the peak, I probably would see 10 patients a day, which is exhausting, but it's good. And I've treated every kind of ailment you could imagine. I've also been running short courses for people at local colleges and 2-day courses for people to come into my home or into local pharmacies and things like that to teach them how to use homeopathy for first aid purposes. I've also written books and have got more heavily into the nutritional side, the herbal side, and all the other aspects of natural health. So over this series of programs, we're going to look at different aspects of health and how you can use natural methods to improve your own health, to help yourself. And of course, along the way, we'll also be highlighting where you can't do it yourself, where you do need to go to the professionals. So we're going to show you how to do it safely too. All right, so I'm going to sign off here. And I want you to look out for the next program. If you want to subscribe, then I will drop you an email every time I release a new part of the series, and then you'll always be up to date. So anyway, I look forward to seeing you here again, and watch out for the next episode. All right, bye.